so that we can learn new skills for how to work with our emotions and our attitudes and our views. And to do that so that we can make a positive contribution to the welfare of all living beings and to society in general. So with an intention of compassion, let's share this morning. Okay, so we've been reading this book, An Open-Hearted Life, for some time now, each Sunday, once a month, going through a chapter. Today, I'm thinking we might go through 2 chapters, so it's a bonanza. Okay, so let's see how we do with the first one. I think we did the one about imagery last time, right? Okay, so we are on chapter 21, How to Cultivate Compassion. So this is a chapter that I wrote. So as a child, I heard, love thy neighbor as thyself. It sounded good, but I didn't see any examples of people who did that. Okay, people were certainly kind to each other, but they always put themselves first. When others didn't do what they liked, then the kindness went away and was replaced by scolding or retaliation. Anyway, I thought, how is it possible to love all these people when so many of them are jerks? Yeah, did you have that feeling? You know, it sounds great, love thy neighbor as thyself, but some of these people, how are we going to love them? Yeah, so I had this, question. At college, I had a 2-part mind. One part was intensely critical of everything, while the other part was searching for peace and harmony. Yeah? Do you have that? Okay, each week I dutifully went to a class on love at the University of Southern California, taught by Leo Biscaglia, the best-selling author and professor in the Department of Special Education. So Leo, after he was teaching at USC, our little group, he went on to become quite famous in the country for his classes on love. And he was, he was quite a person, and he really meant what he said. And I think in my first years in college, he was really kind of the person who made me still have hope. Yeah, because this was the middle of the Vietnam War, it was during the race riots, it was, everything was going on, and then there was Leo talking about love. Quite powerful. It was the one thing that gave me hope during those years of self-doubt and self-exploration they call becoming an adult. Yeah, that was the late 1960s. Nowadays, young adults like myself might be given a bottle of antidepressants. Yeah? And I look back the way I was in college, if it was now, I'm sure that's what would have happened. But that's not what they did then. Actually, in some ways, I'm glad I went through that painful time. In the end, suffering made me more aware of the value of self-knowledge and more compassionate towards others. Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that, when you go through suffering, it hurts, but when you come out the other end, you're always stronger. That doesn't mean we should go and look for suffering. It comes automatically. Okay, so don't go looking, but when it finds us, then realize, that we can benefit from going through it. It also led me to seek a spiritual path that could show me how to train my mind in positive attitudes and emotions. When I encountered the Buddha's teachings in 1975, I discovered a tried and true method to transform my mind. My Buddhist teachers didn't just tell me to love others, they showed me how. And that's what was missing before when I heard love thy neighbor as thyself. How? What's the method to transform our mind to do that? Because we certainly can't transform everybody else and make them lovable according to our criteria for what they need to be in order to be lovable. Yeah, we need to change ourselves. Okay, so they showed me how, according to a step-by-step method that originated with the Buddha and was passed down through centuries of practitioners who applied and developed it. As I learned, meditated, and then practiced these teachings, I discovered that they actually worked, which was a big surprise. Yeah. What a relief to find a method to subdue anger and cynicism, as well as a path to enhance love, compassion, and forgiveness. Yeah, so I didn't know what to expect when I went to my first Buddhist course, and I was actually quite pleasantly surprised. Of course, transforming the mind is no quick and easy endeavor. It requires time, energy, and a lot of self-acceptance and faith. But it's the most worthwhile thing to do. And knowing that we're making our lives meaningful brings joy in itself, even though it is slow going. So just knowing that we're on a path that is valuable, a path that can bring the results that we want, whether everything happens very quickly, it usually doesn't, or not, then we still feel good because we know what we're doing with our lives and we know how to make our lives meaningful. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are two methods for developing an altruistic intention. One is called the 7-point instruction of cause and effect. The other is called equalizing and exchanging self and others. Compassion is an important step in both of these. I'll briefly share these methods with you. If you want to learn more about them, there are many books and living masters that can help you. So the next few chapters are talking about these methods. A precursor to both methods is the cultivation of equanimity, which refers to a mind that is free from clinging attachment to loved ones, anger and hostility towards people we don't like. For the sake of ease, we'll call them enemies, but they don't have to be, ISIS enemies. They're just people we don't like and don't get along with, or who have hurt us or threatened us in some way. Okay, so attachment, we want to have a mind that's free from clinging attachment to loved ones, anger and hostility towards enemies, and apathetic indifference towards everybody else. When practiced consistently over time, the meditation on equanimity brings the feelings of impartial, open-hearted concern for all beings. Okay, so then there's a small reflection. This is the end of that chapter. Okay, so the reflection is called Considering Challenges to Compassion. Consider the challenges and obstacles to your compassion. Yeah. What would you identify as challenges and obstacles to your having compassion? These may be situations in which you find yourself resistant to shifting into a more compassionate approach, or find thoughts that tend to steer your mind away from compassion. For example, the wish to withhold compassion from another person because you don't think that she deserves it. Keep these challenges in mind as you work to develop your compassion through the following entries and reflections, and see if you can find ways to work with them using the methods discussed. Yeah. So it's quite an interesting thing. We may not have ever thought about it before, because all religions, even, secular people, everybody thinks compassion is something good. And yet, sometimes it's difficult for us to cultivate it. So what is it that makes it difficult to cultivate? So, of course, we could say, well, other people make it difficult to cultivate because they're mean and they're nasty and they do this and that and they harm me and it's all their fault. Yeah. But, blaming others for everything that, blaming others for our own shortcomings doesn't work, Actually, it's quite self-defeating because that would mean if others are responsible for our shortcomings, that means others have to change in order for us to eliminate our shortcomings. Now, how are we going to get the whole rest of the world to change? Yeah, we've been trying to do that for quite a long time. Yeah, and the world doesn't cooperate. Does it? Yeah. We give everybody good advice and they don't follow it. Yeah. My wonderful sage's advice, these people don't follow. Imagine that. Of course, they say the same thing about me. But that doesn't matter because their advice is wrong. I don't want to follow it. But my advice is right and they should follow it. Right? Right? I'm glad you agree with me, so I'll give you some advice. Okay, so here's the chapter in equanimity, and what it does is it guides you through a little reflection. So rather than read it, I'm going to just lead you through it, and then we'll see what happens. Okay? So, sit up straight, come home to your breath. It'll just be a short meditation. And in the space in front of you, think of somebody that you are very attached to. Somebody you are very fond of. You always want to be with that person. They are so much a part of your life, or you want them to be so much a part of your life. So somebody that you have a lot of attachment for. So think of a specific individual. And then ask yourself, why am I so attached to that person? Why is there this kind of clingy energy, this, feeling of so much delight being with them, the feeling of not wanting to be separated from them? So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just to ask yourself, why am I so attached to this person? someone that you have a lot of anger, resentment, or hostility towards, and ask yourself, why do I have so much antipathy towards this person? So again, there's no right or wrong answer. Just see what your mind says. Why am I so furious at this person? And then think of a stranger that you don't have much feeling about at all. Somebody you pass by on the street, or the guy at the bank or the gas station or wherever, and ask yourself, why am I so indifferent to that person? So apathetic. when you ask yourself why you have so much attachment towards a certain friend or relative, what did your mind say? What were the reasons?
The person's important to me.
The person's important to me. Okay, what else?
They do stuff for me.
Huh?
They do stuff for me.
They do stuff for me.
She's kind to me.
They're kind to me.
They make me happy.
They make me happy.
They make me feel safe.
They make me feel safe, yeah.
She's been my rock for 70 years.
Your rock for 70 years, good. Okay, then what about the person that you can't stand, that you have anger for? Why are you angry at that
Because
person?
he's a no-good Nick.
Okay. Okay.
Because their views are very biased.
They're quite biased. Yeah,
He's a liar.
they lie.
Because he does
Yeah,
what I want.
they don't do what I want.
They criticize me or challenge my sense of self.
Okay, they criticize me, challenge my sense of self, lie to me. What about the stranger? Are you indifferent towards the stranger?
Because I don't know if they do things that I want or if they don't do things that I want yet, so he's still there.
Oh, okay, so they're not in either camp. They haven't had an opportunity to either fulfill what you want or not do it. Okay. Why else?
They don't affect me.
Yeah, they don't affect me.
Too much need. Too much need.
Too much need. Okay.
You just can't deal with all of them.
Oh, yeah, there are too many people. Yeah, okay, so too much to take care of.
Nothing to relate to.
And nothing, we don't have a relationship with them. Okay, so in all these things, why we're attached to friends, why we have aversion to enemies, why we're apathetic towards strangers, what word did you keep hearing again and again? Me and I. Okay? So it's quite interesting, isn't it, that we judge people as friend, enemies, and strangers, and we have attachment, anger, or apathy towards them, and it all depends on how they relate to me. Okay? So if they do what I like, then they're good people. Yeah? They agree with my ideas, they help me, they're kind. They are good people from their own side. That's who they are objectively, good people. Yeah? When they get in my way and challenge my views and criticize me and, are generally obnoxious to me, then objectively they are creeps, or whatever your favorite term is that you want to call them. Okay? You call them some kind of name and sign them off, and that's who they are. Again, objectively, from their own side. Right? And then all these other people who we go by in the street, they're kind of like inanimate objects, and we just have to get past them without knocking into them in order to get what we want and get away from what we don't want. But we don't really see them as human beings with feelings, because they don't relate much to us. Okay? And again, that's how they are from their own side, independent of our mind. But then when we look again, it's like, well, okay, that friend can be so kind. And when they're kind to me, they are definitely a kind person. But when that same trait they show to somebody I don't like, then what? sign them off. Yeah, when you're kind to me, that's great. That means you're a good person. When you have that same trait, but you show it towards somebody I don't like, yeah, then you're in the same category with the people I don't like. So it's interesting because when we think of their good qualities and how they extend to us, then we think objectively out there they're a wonderful person. Yeah, but those same qualities they show to somebody that we don't like, then they cease to be an objectively good person out there, and they become an objectively, an objective creep out there, or whatever you want to call them, okay? Yeah? Okay, and when your good friend, harms somebody you don't like, you think, fantastic, that person's great. Thank you so much for harming the person I don't like. But when they have that same trait of harming someone, but they harm us, then we don't think that they're so great. Then they become, another one of those jerks. So we think that people have these good qualities in and of themselves and deserve to be friends and enemies, objective friends and enemies. But actually, it's our own mind that's making them into friends and enemies, depending on how they act towards us and how they act towards other people who we either like or don't like. So, who creates the friend? Who creates the enemy? Who creates the stranger? Yeah, we do. Yeah, we're the ones who create these boxes and then put people in them. But if we look over a long period of time, how many of you are still friends with your best friend from kindergarten? Oh, 2 people. Okay, 3 people. Okay, yeah. How many people have lost touch with their best friend from kindergarten? Okay. So, for 3 people, friend then, friend now. For most of us, friend then, stranger now. Yeah, we cared so much about them when we were 5 years old, and now we don't even think about them. They're part of that kind of blur of other human beings that we just have to not bump into. Okay. How many of you have had somebody that you really didn't get along with, but later you met them in a different situation and you discovered that they're quite a nice person? So somebody who was an enemy before, who has become a friend now. How many of you have had somebody that you were very attached to and you thought were very wonderful, and now you don't like at all? Okay. How many of you have had people who you didn't like at all, who now are total strangers and you don't even think about them? Yeah, it's amazing. So at a present moment, when we feel attachment, anger, or apathy, we think that these people are real friends, enemies, and strangers from their own side, and we think that our emotions towards them are totally justified, and that's the only way we will ever feel about these people, because the jerk is an inherent jerk. He's never going to change. And the person I adore is never going to change either. until it all changes. Yeah. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? You know, how out of touch with reality our mind is. You know, how we solidify things that are very changeable by nature. When we can understand that and step back from being so attached and so angry and so indifferent, then there becomes the possibility to create a caring relationship with everybody. Even with people we don't really know, because we see that even though we don't know them personally, they're actually just like us. They want to be happy and they don't want to suffer. Yeah. So if you start looking in people's eyes, you know, when you go outside somewhere where there's lots of strangers on the street, in the shopping center, you know, wherever, the grocery store, look at everybody and say, they're just like me. They want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Yeah. They may be in the stranger category now, but they could become a very good friend. They could become an enemy. But that doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, they want to be happy and not suffer, and we're exactly the same in that way. So it doesn't matter what race they are, what religion they are, what ethnic group they are, what socioeconomic class they are, who they go to bed with, what they go to bed as, and all these other ways that we have of putting people in boxes. Yeah? So let me read a little bit from the book now. While we are sure that people exist in the way that we perceive them, this is not the case. Thinking only in terms of I, me, my, and mine distorts our perspective because it fails to take into account anyone else and causes us to make up many inaccurate ideas that we believe are true. So we believe Susan, who is an objectively and inherently wonderful person, while in fact we may perceive and even exaggerate her good qualities and ignore her bad traits. Really? I exaggerate and ignore? No, I'm perceiving reality, we think. But we need to check again. We believe that objectively Harry is obnoxious, while it's simply that his behavior is rude in our eyes, although he is kind to many people who like him. It gets even more complicated. If John agrees with our opinions about Susan and Harry, John becomes our friend. But if he thinks Susan is fussy and Harry is honest, then John has moved into the category of people we don't like. And if Harry changes and acts in ways that pleases us, then Harry becomes our friend. Susan, Harry, and John all have good qualities and faults, but rather than see any of them as a whole person who has many different and often contradictory qualities, we put them into narrow and fixed categories of friend, enemy, or stranger, and thinks that is who they will be forever. Hence, here, enemy refers to anyone we don't get along with or feel unsafe around. Okay. However, none of these roles is permanent. When we are born, everyone is a stranger. Isn't it? Yeah? We come out of the womb, we don't have any friends. Yeah? We don't have any enemies. Everybody is a stranger. Yeah. It's kind of amazing they take care of us when we're born. You know? It's kind of, you jump into somebody's life and say, oh, okay, I'm moving in for the next 40 years. Take care of me. And they say, hey, it used to be you moved in for 18 years. How come it's 40 now? Okay. And so, when we're born, everyone is a stranger to us. Then some of those strangers become friends and others enemies. As we grow up, friends from school become strangers, as do some of our childhood enemies. Meanwhile, people who were once dear friends may go on to become bitter enemies. And when we meet enemies in different situations later in our lives, we see new sides of them and they become friends. Okay? So it reminds me of, the one person in middle school that I vowed I was going to hate forever. Yeah? And of course I still don't hate him, I don't even know really what happened to him. Yeah. And I'd kind of like to meet him again and apologize for all the hatred that I put in his direction for quite a while. And so it becomes clear that friends, enemies, and strangers are fictitious categories created by our self-centered thoughts that tend to judge everyone in terms of how they act towards me. Since this is the case, what use is there in being attached to loved ones, feeling hostile towards enemies, and apathetic towards everyone else? Since people can change categories quickly and frequently, what purpose is there in holding fixed ideas about other people? What I find interesting is when I think about the people I'm angry at or don't trust or whatever, it becomes quite apparent because this is, what they did to me. Yeah. And then I see my mind create a whole court case against them. Yeah. It's like, you are arrested for doing this to me. Yeah. And then I become the prosecuting attorney. You did this, and you did this, and you did this, and you did this. And that person has no defense. Okay? Yeah. And I prosecute them for everything horrible that they did to me. The judge is also me, so the judge decides in my favor. The jury is also me, and the jury says, yes, you're totally right. That person did all these horrible things. They deserve to be punished and ostracized and locked up and put in prison forever. And then my mind puts them in prison, locks the door, throws away the key, and I think that's going to make me happy. What's your experience when you do that? Yeah? Now I've gotten to the point where I get halfway through the trial. I'm not even halfway through the trial. And I just say, I'm exhausted. I am so weary from prosecuting this person and hating them. And, it's just like, hey, I want to be happy, and doing this is making me quite miserable. Yeah. So let's dismiss the case. Yeah. I give up. Victory is not important to me. Okay, I could push, and I could attack, and I could coerce that person and threaten them and do everything so that eventually they capitulate and do things my way. But, that's going to be pretty exhausting too. Isn't it? Threatening people, manipulating, jiving them on, hitting them in the points where they're sensitive. Yeah? it's like, ugh, that takes so much energy to do that. And you have to keep doing it until they change their mind. Yeah. And sometimes these guys are so stubborn, they're never going to capitulate and do things my way. I just don't have the energy for it. Yeah. So it's like, okay. Yeah. I'm dropping my anger, which is for me what it means to forgive somebody. I forgive you. I'm dropping my anger. I have better things to do in my life than sit here and, retry you in the court of I, me, my, and mine forever. I want to be happy. I want to go to court every day and go through this. Even if the whole world agrees with me. It's like, again, I have to go through the prosecution. You know how it is when you really dislike somebody? You prosecute them again and again and again. And the jury sides with you every time, and the judge sides with you every time. But somehow you can't put it away and close the case. You have to try them again the next day. Yeah? Yeah. And again you win, and again they're wrong, and again you throw them in prison. And it still doesn't satisfy you. When we open our eyes, look at the big picture, and go beyond the superficial appearances of how someone relates to me, we see that fundamentally all of us are the same. Everyone wants to be happy and no one wants to suffer. That's the bottom line. We may find some people more physically attractive and others less so. Some people may appear more intelligent, successful, or humorous, and others less so. But all these appearances are superficial and can change very quickly. Therefore, why allow our mind to be affected by thoughts of attachment, anger, and apathy? It makes more sense and is more satisfying to see everyone as having the same ultimate goal of being happy and avoiding pain. In doing so, we will be able to feel connected to everyone and come to have concern for them as well. Yeah? Well, look, everybody wants happiness. Nobody wants to suffer. Yeah? We're all alike. We can understand that part of that person. Okay? Yeah. And it doesn't matter who they are. Yeah? There's just been 2 mass shootings in less than 24 hours. And the people who did these somehow want to be happy, don't want to suffer. In their confusion, they thought killing other people would make them happy. What's going to happen instead is the one was killed, the other was arrested. They're not going to be. No, was one killed? Or were they both arrested? One was killed and the other one was arrested. Okay? Different parts of the country. Yeah. But both these people were trying to be happy and they were terribly confused. Yeah. And in another situation, we may meet them and see some good qualities. Yeah. You don't know. I work with people in prison. And some of these people are really nice people. Yeah. We all think in society, oh, these people. But, when you get to know them on a personal level, some of the guys I work with are really good Dharma practitioners. Yeah. And really sympathetic, kind people. Despite what they did. Or sometimes because of what they did. Yeah, they decided they needed to change after they did what they did. Yeah. So my point is, let's not throw anybody away. Yeah. Because at the bottom of the day, we're all alike. And then that way we can feel connected to everybody. Breaking down rigid categories in order to cultivate impartial love and compassion for all beings is something everyone can do. A friend of mine works for the police as a mediator in hostage situations. He told me, I asked him, one day I said, what do you do if somebody's taken you hostage? Yeah? So he told me that the best way to resolve this fearful situation is to help the hostage takers get in touch with the common humanity they share with the hostages. He counseled, if you are ever taken hostage, ask the hostage taker about his family and tell him about yours. If he's wearing a t-shirt with the logo of a particular sports team, band, or singing group, talk about that. That breaks down the barriers between you. It helps him to see that this person is just like me, and it makes it more difficult for him to harm you. I just read a story, actually, about a woman who was kidnapped and beaten, and when she finally gained consciousness, she was somewhere, she didn't even know where, with the guy who abducted her. And he had orchids in his room. And she started talking to him about the orchids, and said, I also have orchids, and how do you water them, and how difficult it is to get them to grow properly, and, how you trim them and everything. And they had a whole discussion about orchids. And then they started, talking about their families. And she told him, I just had a baby, and I hope you don't harm me because, my baby wants his mama. And how would you have felt without your mother? And, they continued talking. In the end, he released her without harming her anymore. Yeah, because she was able to make that personal connection with him. Yeah, and see him as a human being, and he saw her as a human being. One of the qualities we admire so much that makes us feel safe and at ease is unconditional affection. Similarly, when we have unconditional affection for others, it is a marvelous gift to share with them, one that enables them to relax, trust, and be themselves. For this reason, equanimity, a mind that is free from clinging attachment to loved ones, anger and hostility towards people we don't like, and apathetic indifference towards everyone else. That mind of equanimity is important in order to have the kind of love and compassion that extends equally to all beings. Without equanimity, our positive emotions are limited to only those we like and approve of, those in our friend category. In that case, our love and compassion have strings attached, because to get in my friend category, you have to treat me nicely, agree with my ideas, not comment on my faults, support me when I'm down, stick up for me when other people criticize me, and the list goes on and on of things you have to do in order to be in my friend category. Okay? If you do something I don't like, you'll move to my enemy category, and my love and compassion for you will evaporate. To overcome these judgments and biases, equanimity is essential. Feeling equanimity doesn't mean that we treat everyone the same way. Yeah, this is important. Okay? Clearly, how we interact with someone depends on our relationship with them and on social roles. We may give our car keys to friends, but not to strangers. In our hearts, we can equally wish both of them to have happiness and not suffering, But we know it's not wise to give our car keys to just anyone. Okay? So we still act according to the situation, but inside we can have equal feeling for all of the people. Similarly, equanimity doesn't mean we trust everyone equally. While we may have the same amount of concern for a 2-year-old and an adult, we don't trust the toddler with a box of matches. Okay? If someone has the habit of not doing their share of work on a common project, we may choose not to work with them, but that doesn't mean our wish for them to be well and happy is less than for someone, another person who is more responsible. Yeah. In the same way, we may really respect one person in one area because they have incredible skills and so on, but that doesn't mean that we get in a plane that they're piloting. Yeah. If they don't know how to fly the plane, why would I get in the plane? That's not too smart. So we can really trust somebody, in many different situations. But, when we get in an airplane, we're trusting a stranger with our lives. Yeah. We're not going to trust maybe our best friend with our life if we get in an airplane with them as the pilot. Yeah, because they don't know how to fly the plane. In short, equanimity gives us the inner freedom to stop making our feelings towards others dependent on the way that they treat us. This is a radical idea that initially may feel uncomfortable. How can I not regard someone who insults me as an enemy and not be angry with them? But when we try to put equanimity into practice, we will see that it is possible. Mother Teresa and the Dalai Lama have done it. Why can't we? The beauty of equanimity is that we feel open-hearted, caring concern for everyone, which opens the door to cultivating unconditional love and compassion for all. Okay, and then let me just read the reflection for you to do. Consider the ways that bias creeps into your relationships. For example, when you unconsciously exaggerate the positive qualities of friends or overemphasize the negative qualities of those people with whom you have conflicts or differences. Consider that just like you, all these people want to be happy and to avoid suffering. It may help to recall experiences you've had with people who once were enemies but now are friends, or the reverse, reminding yourself that your relationship to others can change over time and that all people are worthy of compassion. See if you can feel compassion for all beings equally, regardless of the relationship that you have with them. If you're not ready to do this, then try to have the wish to have compassion for all beings equally. Okay. So another reflection or activity you can do is the meditation that I led you in at the beginning of this session. Do it many more times and see what comes up for you. It's really quite interesting. And it helps quite a bit just to let go of some of our strong, afflictive, or disturbing emotions towards other people.